Okay, we are going to go over the notes for your health curriculum. I can get on. There we go. I'm posting these. You're going to need this information for your vocab quiz. You need to watch the video because if you don't watch this video, there's things I'm going to say in the video that'll help you with the vocab quiz. You're absolutely allowed to watch this video while you take the quiz. So first, these notes that I've posted. I'm going to quickly go through them with you. A non-communicable disease is a disease that is not transmitted from person to person. Okay, so it's a disease that generally lasts longer. You get it for other reasons. We'll get into the risk factors, what causes them, but it's not something that passes from person to person. Some examples: cystic fibrosis, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. That's not something you catch by being around people with the disease. Why do you get them? What puts people at higher risk? Well, sometimes it's your gender. Obviously, women are much more likely to get breast cancer than men, though men can get it. Your genetics, the genes you have, there are certain genes that they think are linked to things like Alzheimer's, cystic fibrosis definitely is genetically linked. Your lifestyle, alcohol and drug use, physical activity. C could be like your sleep. Those things can lead to non-communicable disease. Your environment, exposure to pollutants, if you're a smoker or not, or exposed to smoke. Your economic and social conditions. Sometimes just living in a poor environment can put you at a higher risk for non-communicable disease. Diabetes. If you don't have a lot of money, if your family struggles with money, it's easier to buy cheaper foods that tend to be higher in fats and calories and sugars, and that can be one of the risk factors for diabetes. A congenital disease is a disease that's existing at birth or developing during the birthing process, sometimes into the first months of life. They might not actually identify them until then. Cerebral palsy is the one that typically comes to mind. It tends to occur during the birthing process. Something happens. Or there is congenital heart disease. It's a heart disease you're born with. You might not even be identified with it until later in life, but it was there since you were born. Things that can cause congenital disease: toxic substances that maybe the mother takes when she's pregnant, infections during gestation or when the mom is pregnant or the baby, lack of nutrients in utero, or sometimes genetic things can lead to congenital diseases. Communicable diseases. They pass from person to person. They can pass by direct or indirect contact. Indirect means you don't have to touch someone to get a communicable disease. Think of what's going on right now. The big worry is that these respiratory droplets from coughing and sneezing and speaking have the virus in them. And that even if you're not touching someone, if you're close enough to them, the whole idea of social distancing, that if you breathe in those respiratory droplets that have the virus, then you can become infected with it. All right. So you do not have to be touching to get a communicable disease. Examples: measles, mumps, flu. Some communicable diseases we've almost eradicated. That means they're gone. Some of them we thought we did, like measles, but they've started to come back. Much of that leads back to vaccinations and vaccinating for certain diseases. Okay, causes of communicable diseases are what we call germs. Germs, microbes, pathogens are all the same terms meaning the same thing. They're all different terms, meaning the same things. So pathogens are microbes, which are germs. It's all the same topic. They are what cause communicable disease, and there are 4 of them. There are bacteria, virus, fungus, and protozoa. Those are the 4 pathogens, the 4 microbes, the 4 types of germs that pass a communicable disease. 2 of them are what you're most familiar with: bacteria and viruses. Bacteria and viruses are not the same thing. A bacteria is a full single-celled organism. Some are harmful and some are helpful. You have bacteria on and in your body that you need. It's when that bacteria level becomes unbalanced that you get sick. Also, bacteria can produce waste or toxins that actually is what can make us sick. Not the bacteria itself, but its waste. An infection like a bacterial infection, is when the bacteria rapidly multiplies and your body cannot get rid of it. You can have bacteria. The bacteria can get in your body and start to multiply, but if your body fights it off, then you don't get infected, meaning you don't get sick from it. Virus, they're smaller than a bacteria. They need a host cell to take over. So they get into your host cell, a cell in your body, and they make that host cell reproduce more of the virus. When they rapidly reproduce and take over is when it said you're infected. So you can have a virus in your body, and then your body's fighting it off and winning, and you don't get sick. Just like with this whole thing that's happening now, the coronavirus. Some people don't ever show symptoms because their body was able to successfully, quickly fight off that virus before you got sick. A fungus is a microbe that can't move on its own. Okay, mushrooms are a type of fungus. They don't normally cause infection, but I think the most common fungal infection is like athlete's foot. And then protozoa is a one-celled organism. They're the biggest of the microbes. And the classic example of a protozoa infection would be malaria, which are carried by mosquitoes. Your body naturally fights off infection, naturally fights off all of those microbes. You have an immune system, okay? The immune system are cells, tissues, and proteins that defend your body. Immunity is your ability to resist pathogens. Now, you're not born with an immunity to anything. When you're born, you have an immune system, but it hasn't been introduced to anything. Some immunity you can get through breast milk, some that can help, and then vaccinations. So the next category down talks about what a vaccination is, but you're not necessarily born with immunity to anything. You need to build immunity. Your body fights off foreign invaders, okay, and it builds antibodies. Antibodies fight a pathogen, a toxin. It fights off any of the microbes that cause disease. But it's a one-to-one relationship. One antibody fights off one specific microbe. That's why you need to get a flu shot every year, because the flu, the virus that causes the flu, mutates. And it mutates enough that the antibodies you might have to another flu virus don't work on the current flu virus. And that's what they're researching now with the coronavirus. You know, how easily does it mutate? If we make a vaccination for it, are we going to have to continually be vaccinated, just like with the flu? And we might, because if it changes and mutates rapidly, it just might be something we add into your yearly flu vaccinations. But it's a one-to-one relationship. Then your cells will store that information to use again. So if you ever come across that microbe again, your body's like, oh, I remember you, and it knows how to fight it off. A vaccine will boost your immune system. It's really introducing your body to a dead or weakened form of the microbe. So if it's a dead form of the germ, your body still sees it as that germ and starts to fight it off and successfully fights it off because the virus is dead, the bacteria is dead. And then you're able to, whenever you come in contact with it again, your body already knows how to fight it off. That's what a vaccine does for you. Antibiotics are only useful on bacteria. They will not fight off viruses. They only fight off bacteria. There are some antibiotics that are good for fungus or protozoa. All right, quickly check over. Okay, vaccine can use just a portion of a virus or a portion of a bacteria or a portion of any of the microbes to fight off and to produce immunity. All right, now I'm going to show you the HIV notes I typically go over. I mean, this is a big section of your health curriculum that you guys are kind of missing. First, HIV is human immunodeficiency virus. It's the virus that enters into the blood and causes the infection. It specifically targets the T cells in your body. T cells are a white blood cell, they're part of the immune system, that are what wakes up the immune system that, hey, we have a problem here. Well, the virus attacks that alarm system, so that your body never really gets the alarm that, oh, there's a problem. So when you contract the virus, you can test for the antibodies to the virus. Okay, you can go and have a blood test, and the blood test will tell a doctor if you've been exposed to it, because you won't start to build antibodies unless you have had the virus. That's like right now with what's going on with the coronavirus. You wouldn't have antibodies to the coronavirus unless you had the virus. And maybe your body fought it off successfully. You never really got sick. That's what they call asymptomatic. But your body still has the antibodies because it prepared for being sick. AIDS is different than HIV. AIDS is acquired immune deficiency syndrome. You have to have HIV to have AIDS. AIDS is a progression of HIV. You have the virus. You can live with the virus. Many people now are living with it for a really long time, even some throughout their life with it. You develop AIDS when you have the virus and either an opportunistic disease, something you wouldn't normally get, your body would fight off fine, but it can't fight it off because you have this other virus that's attacking your immune system, or you progress into AIDS when you have HIV and a really low T cell count, meaning the virus has killed off enough of your T cells that you are below 200 per milliliter of blood, 200 T cells per milliliter of blood. Then you've progressed into having AIDS, meaning your immune system is really weakened. So HIV and AIDS are not the same thing. HIV is the virus. AIDS is the syndrome, the progression of the virus from the virus into the syndrome, because you have the virus and you're sick. You have the virus and you have an opportunistic infection, or you have a very low T cell count. So call them the same thing is wrong. They're not. Let's see. Opportunistic infections, usually your body could fight off these infections, but it can't because the virus is attacking your body. I'm going to attach this whole slideshow so you can look over it. These are really things that you should know. It goes through how it's transmitted. It is categorized as an STD, though there are other ways than sexually transmitting to get the virus. Anytime blood or one of the 4 fluids that are listed on right here on the slideshow, any way that you can transmit those, you can transmit the virus. Okay? So part of the 4th quarter health objective is to go into STDs, which HIV is considered one of them. And because we're not in school and we don't get a chance to chat in person, I'm going to say you really need to sit down and have a conversation with your parents, because there are important things you should know, especially when you're getting into high school, about STDs and the area we live in. I have a slideshow that shows the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, their numbers on sexually transmitted diseases by areas of the country. Where we live in Lucas County has the highest STD ratings numbers on the scale. Like, we have the highest numbers of those STDs in our county. Now, there are other parts of the world that obviously are other parts of Ohio even, but Lucas County in particular has a very high rate of STDs. It's just the facts. It is what it is. And you can't go into high school, I think. You need to be aware of that information, and you need to make smart choices. And you're going to see on this slideshow the one and only way, and to not transmit HIV, the only positive way, proven way, is to practice abstinence, to practice, not be sexually active. That's the only proven way to know that you're not going to pass or get an STD. So now I'm running out of my time, so you need to look over this. You can again use this video for your quiz tomorrow, but please look through the notes in the slideshow that I post.